Welcome back. In this video, I would like to talk about decorations as well as what your map can tell about your game. So it can actually tell a little story even. So let's look at this. So let's look at this truck here, and maybe let's actually drag in this flat truck over here. Okay, so having this, you could expect that some truck owners or some people thought, okay, this is where the zombies are coming from, so let's block them, for example. Okay, so they didn't block this street because they wanted for cars to still be able to pass through here, but they blocked those other streets so that no one can come from their side or from that side. So let's move this truck around a little bit so that it's actually positioned correctly. Something like that should be fine. Now what we can do is we can add some scrubs. So here let's add a little tree small like so, and then what we can also do is we can add a bit of, well, some bricks here. So let's add some bricks in here like that maybe. Okay, so now you could say, okay, people tried to make a fire here maybe even, or something like that, where they put together those bricks. Let me duplicate that and something like that, and they try to make a fire in the center here, not with this ground, but more like with this scrub here. So even though this is not perfect, but this is a little bit what you could tell about this map now, or where you could say, okay, now this is where we are creating an atmosphere for our game, where it's not just elements that are in our game, not just game objects, but they actually tell a little story. Okay, so that's something that you could see here. Then we could go ahead and add a little bit of a traffic light here. I don't know what would be the order, something like this probably. Well, not on the street. Let me move it around also using V here. Let's snap it around like so. Okay, this looks a little bit like it, I guess. So that should be fine. Then we can add, where is it? It's further up, I believe. Some barriers here. So let me add this barrier into my game. So here towards the end, maybe even like so. Then somebody came along and blocked the street with a barrier, and maybe a second barrier and a third one. So they blocked the street like this. They tried to block it. And then even some stone barriers, you could move those around and try to position them accordingly. Okay, so let me put it in there. Well, this probably isn't that great. Let's also put it behind it in the streets. So let me find a good spot. Doesn't seem like it. Maybe using the control key will be a little better. Okay, so you could now go ahead and build your level like this. You can add cables to your game. They're not very detailed, but let's say people tried to use cables in order to hang something. Okay, so let's reposition this cable like so, and then let's rotate the cable even further using our keys here once again to rotate. Now like so. All right, so yeah, you can see a bunch of options here what we can do. Maybe we can move it a little further even like so. Yeah, so now there's this cable hanging. Well, yeah, you can see a bunch of options that you have, even with this limited amount of resources that you have here. So the game objects that we have here, it's not insane amounts of objects, but you can still build some cool stuff here. All right, you can even go ahead and add a little bit of a fence here. So add the fence over there. Let's turn it around like so by 90 degrees. Okay, and now let's move it in like that. Let's make sure that we have a ground there. Maybe not a street ground, but maybe dirt instead. So here, road dirt center. Let me add that in there. Let's make sure that this dirt is also positioned well. So here this edge should be something like that. Maybe underneath. Yeah, this looks a little better. So now we could duplicate this dirt, move it around like so, duplicate once again. Yeah. And step by step, our game is getting a certain shape and looks a little more like a game. Now at this point, you can also make sure, or you should also make sure, that your streets are going to be at your street level. Okay, then your walls, let me also put the walls separately. So let's create a new empty game object in here. Create empty, and I don't want to put it in there, but actually outside of it. You see why it becomes difficult to do it via right click? You can still do it here. Create empty. Let me create an empty game object for walls or houses. Something like this would be okay. Or buildings maybe even, instead of houses. Buildings. And now let's put all of those walls in there. Like so, into the buildings. The details, there we could say, and let's create another one. And by the way, I forgot to position it to 0, 0, 0. Oh, that's tricky. Okay, let me go back. Let's make sure that I position it at 0, 0, 0. Let's reset it. And now let's add the walls in there. Let's get them into the buildings. The same for those ones. Do we have any other walls? Yes, I think this one here. And now let's create decorations. Decorations. Let's make sure it's reset here. And now let's add the details in there. Like so. All right. And now this tree small, maybe it's also a decoration. Road, dirt center. Well, we could say this is part of streets. Like so. Yeah. Step by step, it looks more and more like a map. Okay. So as you see, you have a lot of options when it comes to how you create your map. And this is actually quite difficult because sometimes you want to build a map in a way where it just creates this atmosphere, right? And atmosphere is created by lighting. It's created by what is in the map and how things are positioned in the map. Okay, so this here, if you put a bunch of bricks next to something, you could assume that they were before maybe on the truck. Okay, so you could duplicate these and put the other ones onto the truck so that it looks like, okay, they were on the truck, then they fell down for whatever reason. And yeah, basically you're painting a story by building your map. And adding these little details will then make a whole difference, which creates a scenery, which can create a bunch of images inside of the head of the player. Okay, so especially in our zombie apocalypse game, this is going to be a very important aspect. All right, so in the next video, we're going to see how we can limit the directions the player can go. And that's going to be something quite important because you want to make sure that the player can't get outside of your game and suddenly fall off or something like that. So see you in the next video.